Where's your microphone?
It's right here. How do you know? I don't know.
Okay.
What?
Yeah, well, we'll see what people say. All right, we're live.
We are. Let's wait for some people to come. No need to start.
Do we have to have the banter?
You can sing. He's an on-time God. He's an on-time God. Yes, he is.
Let's see if we can get some people to come in here.
Come on in the room. That's my jam. I can't lie.
I'd play it, but then we'll get a copyright strike.
Hello, Tiana. Hey, Natalie.
All right.
He may not come when you want him. See? She had never heard that song before in her life. I had to play some Dottie Peoples. Now, I don't know who's the singer that you listen to, like what version? Because I had Dottie Peoples on. He's an on-time God. Yes, he is. He may not come when you want him, but he'll be right there on time. Woo! Yes. Missed you guys last night. Yes, we are so sorry. We are actually at a conference in South Carolina.
No. Yes. I was trying to remember which of the
Carolinas. Where are we at then? Yeah, we're in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And we were at a conference, and the speaker last night was the one and only Bishop Wooden. Patrick L. Wooden. Bishop Patrick L. Wooden. Don't catch me without, yes, Junior, without putting that bishop on it. But yes, it was so good. And so
it was like Black church.
It was all the things. It was everything. It was everything with good doctrine. Okay. Proper hermeneutics. I was grateful.
There was an organ.
There was an organ. There were fans.
Shouting.
There was a little shouting here and there. Oh, yes. It was so good.
And it was me and 3 white people.
Yes. Yes. And she kept asking questions.
I tried not to.
Y'all, then, okay, so look, okay. Black church is a little different than your normal white evangelical church. Okay. So you're not supposed to take nothing to drink inside the sanctuary.
Oh, you're going to tell this
story? We will not desecrate the sanctuary with your outside foolishness. So I knew this. And yet I still, and this is pray from my heart, because I knew that I should not be bringing my drink inside. And as soon as I hit the door, one of the ushers got me, and she was like, "You can't bring that inside." And I was like, "I know." And she's like, "Then why were you trying?" I was like, "Well, it's been a while." So I go and I throw my drink away. But Krista has her drink it was some tea in a water bottle that she had refilled. And so she had an inside pocket. I was like, just put it in the inside pocket. Y'all, taking me back to being like 9 years old in my grandmother's church and trying to figure out all the ways that I can get around all the rules. Okay. Like, how can I have this gum in church without Sister Patterson, like walking up and putting it in, telling me to put it in her hand and, all that. And so Krista had snuck it in like her little inside pocket. Y'all, why is she going to drop the bottle? We sit, she ain't even moving. We sitting, we are seated. Nobody's moving. All I hear is blam. And her bottle then dropped behind her seat in front of the old lady behind us.
And I said, oopsie.
She a mother in the church. You are lucky she didn't grab you by the back of your neck. Cause yes.
I said, oopsie.
Oh, so yes, this is what happened. Today she did not bring a drink. But goodness. Bishop, what?
I learned my lesson.
Yes. Y'all, I was like, my goodness, I'm thankful my grandmother was not there. Bishop Patrick L. Wooden Jr. from the Upper Room, Church of God in Christ in Raleigh, North Carolina, spoke last night. And tonight, Dr. Bob Woodson will be speaking from the Woodson Center in 1776 Unites. Y'all, I can't wait. Delano Squires spoke earlier today. Judge Cheryl Allen spoke. Oh, I was supposed to text her the link. Give me the link. Because she's not going to be the one asking me why I didn't send the link. Hurry up. How do I get it? Girl. And so the conference.
Somebody send Monique the link.
The conference that we are at is CFAD, and it's Christian Families Against Destructive Decisions. This is not a quote unquote Black conference, but this is a conference that is looking at issues within large, prominently Black areas and within the Black family in particular. And so we came. Chris is the one who originally found out about it. She told me about it, and we're just like,
Okay, I sent you
yes,
the link.
like this is part of the reason why we even started Off Code, was to be able to address the issues that are being blamed on whiteness within Black communities, and to
It's really just a bunch of people that sound like you and Kevin.
that's really, I'm like, these are my people. I have found some of my people, a little niche of people in, you know, the Southeast, and
Yeah.
it's been very, very good. Now you need to talk, because I need to text this.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so we're here at the CFAD conference. And again, that's Christian Families Against Destructive Decisions. And it's out of Promised Land Church of God in Christ. So it's a Kojic church. And it's founded by
Apostle Tommy Quick.
Christian brother
I believe
named
it's
Apostle
Quick.
Tommy.
I think it's Tommy Quick.
Yeah,
I know it's Apostle Quick.
Tommy Quick. And his church is where we're at for the conference. And it's a smaller conference, but it's a new work, and they're really trying to engage in basically community renewal in the Black community through a gospel-focused, biblically faithful lens. And a lot of their efforts focus on rebuilding the Black family to set it up for future generations, and doing it very strongly and clearly based on biblical principles of Genesis. And Bishop Wooden last night gave a strong word about the only hope for communities is the gospel. And he started in Genesis 1 and 2 and 3, and then skipped forward to Matthew 1 and how Jesus is the fulfillment of Genesis 3:15. And it was a strong message, it was a strong word in a Black style. And
she was kind of lost. It was like my first time at Viola Chapel for Christmas. She just sat there like,
Eventually I'd watched him online, so I knew some things, and I had been to Black church with you a couple of times during the pandemic. It wasn't 100% new, but it was definitely like next level experience. It's sort of like the intersection of a Jesus pep rally and a worship service.
Kinda. I'm not really sure what a Jesus pep rally is.
Because there's just a lot of shouting and cheering, and like you get at a high school pep rally. People were really excited.
Okay, so Chris and I had this whole conversation yesterday, and I was like, I don't understand how, and this please forgive me if it's a caricature or a blanket statement about quote unquote this white church or white evangelicalism, but I was like, I don't understand how people can think about Jesus and not emote, not like become exuberant and ecstatic and excited because, oh my gosh, like I was on my way to a sinner's grave, to a hell. Hell had me bound, captured. And now look at the freedom that's in Christ. Like even when I think of my life before critical race theory and after. Before critical race theory, I was in my own like Black community, and that was it. Like I had white friends, but the relationship was always a little, I don't want to say a little side eye, but I wouldn't say that there was like this deep connectivity that we were like deeply family. And now outside of that, when I realized, one, reading the Bible in context, but don't start with me, it's too early. But understanding what that's accomplished, like that makes me want to shout. It makes me want to run and leap and tell people and cry and just be so grateful. And I don't understand how people can just like be like in worship.
I was trying to make the argument that just the Western European culture is just, we tend to be a lot more reserved.
And I said that's a hot lie.
Yeah.
And here's why. Because Western European culture at a baseball game, football game, college sports,
Look at that.
basketball game, y'all be woo and shouting and cheering, and y'all have all these emotions. So I'm trying to understand why, when the greatest accomplishment on earth is Jesus Christ and his death, burial, and resurrection that has set you free, you would not be more like, I'm the one at the baseball game that's like, when is this gonna be over? Like, dude, I'm so glad he got that run, but man, or like at the basketball game, like that's awesome. That is so cool that you just run down the thing. And I don't even go to football games. I don't really understand that at all. But why do we how can we give so much emotion, strength, and energy and vibe to the football game and yet not to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? Like I just don't understand.
I think
Me
it's a fair
personally.
point. I think it's a fair point.
And I'm not trying to characterize or
No,
categorize like everybody and be like, or make a caricature out of it. But I do have the question.
well, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Saying it's like, kind of like a pep rally is just my very basic way of trying to characterize, like what I saw as a cultural outsider.
Yeah, but we're cheering. Like
It's a lot of cheering.
It's a lot of cheering. You, especially
It was 4 hours.
Especially when you think of who you were before, what life was before, and then you think of what life is now. Even though life is not perfect, you still have struggles and all that. Honey, listen, there's a lot to be grateful for. There's a lot. There's a reason for me to wave my hands and to raise my hands and to clap and to shout. And yeah, there's just a lot.
Jason says, "Were you at CFAD last night?" Yep, we were.
Yes, Jason. Yes, we were. It was so good.
And today and tomorrow.
Yeah,
and Brandon says it's wrong to get more excited about football than Jesus. I think.
Look, I'm not trying to bind anybody conscience, honey. You got to work that out with fear and trembling before the Lord. But I am on that same page, though. So anyway, CFAD, the Christian.
So just a second before you go into that. So today, ask Mo anything except your age. So if
you can find that out on Google.
So go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and we'll take as many of them as we can.
So I was just blown away by CFAD, Christian Families Against Destructive Decisions, because they are boldly speaking out. One, they have like these satellite groups chapters that really work with couples, Black couples specifically, but with couples to help them move into marriage if they're like not married, or to strengthen their marriage. So they do premarital counseling, but they also do postmarital counseling. Like, I've never been married before, so now I'm in this marriage. Postmarital counseling, it seems like it would be just as needed as premarital counseling, so that I know, how do I understand what he's talking about? How does he understand what I'm talking about? How do we walk this road together as two sinners? You got two sinners who are now coming together.
A lot of their vision is community renewal through the gospel and families. That's what we got to boil it down. And it's a lot of the themes that Monique and Kevin talk about on Off Code, about like, we got to stop killing our babies. We got to stop having children on a wedlock. We've got to do more mentoring of our young men. We've got to do more mentoring of our young women. We've got to
homeschool. They promote homeschooling like none other. They are like, look, you need to get married early, and get married quick. But don't get married to wrong. And then have a family. Or that you are waiting to have sex and to start your family, and then homeschool your kids. Don't put them in the public school system. I mean, argue, each side of that conversation. But I love the fact that they are wanting to put forth an alternative to what's in the public school system. And I know that there are teachers. I have a friend who is in the Dallas area. She's a public school teacher. She's a Christian. She's not with the baloney and mess that the school wants to indoctrinate students into. She's a rare gem. Many teachers are brought in hook, line, and sinker into the indoctrination. So I'm so excited to be here.
5 years ago, this is way before we started the ministry, I remember asking very vividly when we were out on a walk, I said, where are the Black leaders who are speaking out prophetically against, some of these patterns that are destroying the beauty of the Black culture and the Black community, which has historically been very aligned with the Christian worldview and more conservative and family values. Like, where are those Black pastors out against abortion who understand that parents are the leaders of their children and promoting marriage and not promiscuity? And I remember Monique was like, "Yeah, there's nobody like that. I never heard of anybody like that."
But here they are.
But we found them. It
People.
only took 5 years. We found them. It's a whole group, and it was nice. We're gonna go back in a couple of hours here and hear Dr. Bob Woodson from the Woodson Center tonight at the worship service. So if you have questions for Monique, we'll stay on here for a few minutes and answer as many of them as you can. So yes, Sylvia has been is asking, have we been sharing? Have we had a chance to meet new people and share, see if new people? Yeah, nobody's really heard of us out here except maybe Delano.
Yeah. Delano Bishop Wooden has given on.
He didn't recognize you though. You had to tell him who you were because
No.
he'd only ever seen you on Zoom.
Yes. And so yes.
When you
I was like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So Bishop Wooden, and he knew the Center for Biblical Unity.
Yeah.
So he even said from the stage, he was like, the Center for Biblical Unity, I like that center. And he was like, I know I like that center.
Yeah, I don't think he quite put
he
it
didn't
all
put
together.
the two and two together yet. But and then Judge Cheryl Allen, from Pennsylvania, she was on the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, the state of Penn. I mean, whoo, she's fire for real, y'all.
She spoke this morning.
And I love her heart. Like, I just love that she's fierce and yet gentle and yet fierce. And her background and her story is just, I want to have her on off code. I'm not going to tell all of like her background and story and stuff like that, but she does a lot of work in pro life and things like that. And so, she's amazing.
So introducing people to CFBU, we're meeting people we got to meet Delano Squires in person. We got to meet Bishop Wooden in person. We'll meet Bob Woodson tonight in person. So just a lot of fun.
We're working on getting.
We met some people from the Heritage Foundation.
Yes, Heritage Foundation, and
that was our first contact with anybody from
Heritage. Delano's heart now with Heritage Foundation. I think his name is Terrence Todd is another gentleman who spoke on social media in teens or social media in children and helping parents to navigate social media with their children. And then Jonathan Butcher is with the Heritage Foundation. He's a policy analyst. And he spoke about critical race theory in public education. It was
and so great. We might have some of these people on in the future on off code or all the things. There's kind of a whole new batch of people that we haven't really interacted with, and be great new resources for the ministry and being able to connect people. So just really grateful to all of our donors for making trips as possible so that we can continue to expand the resources for the ministry, be a hub for other people and finding like-minded people.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that I'm continuously thinking about is, yes, we can speak out against critical race theory. We can speak out against queer theory. We can speak out against, all of the theories all day long and point people to Christ. But we also have to remember that as we point people to Christ, there are practical solutions that come with Jesus. And so the things that people blame on whiteness, like abortion, well, no, abortion isn't a byproduct of whiteness. Here's what Christianity says and offers, and here are the steps to be able to have a fuller life. And so, one of the things that I appreciate is the aspect of the fuller life that's available in Christ that they're talking about.
And just the boots on the ground efforts that they're doing in the communities to reach people that we might not be able to reach.
Yeah.
But we can be part of their kind of educational efforts. There are some people there, they're like, oh, I love your podcast and I've learned so much from you. And so as their leaders maybe find us, it can also be part of the connections. Now,
Awesome. Wait, hold on.
somebody likes your hair.
Thank you. Hold on.
Tiana says your hair is giving me all the vibes.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see here. Scroll down because I thought she said, maybe it's the way the churches preach. A lot of white people see churches telling them what they can't do, and it sounds like the Black church focuses on what to be grateful for. I think that is a huge focus of like looking at where you were before Jesus, and like it's almost like the Exodus narrative of like look at what God has freed you from. And yeah, I think here there is a lot of you should not do this. Like you should not be sleeping around. But it is a huge focus too on just being grateful and God's goodness and his design for life and his provision. All of that. Okay.
Yeah. No, I think too, like one of the differences that I see is it was a whole room full of people that kind of talk like you. And one of the things I noticed in Bishop Wooden's sermon last night was his admonishment was even if you stand alone,
Yes.
God's got you.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about
it. Yes.
And you just don't hear that kind of bold, courageous preaching that often in, white kind of non-denominational churches. Not saying it's not there, but it's it doesn't sound like that very often. And those are all messages that you've been telling us from the beginning of the ministry. Just even if you have to stand alone, who cares?
Yeah.
You got to speak out. You got to trust the Lord. And it was a whole room full of people that talk like that.
Yeah.
And so it was a blessing.
We talked to a gentleman right before we left the last session, and he was like, "Man, my friend just canceled me. Told me I lost my Black card." He was like, "I don't know if I'll talk to him again." And I was like, "Man, like that's so real." And I know what that feels like too, but we still have to stand. And there's also a call in this group of people as a reminder to stand. And I think that's what Bishop Wooden was doing last night was don't forget to stand because we all need to be encouraged. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. We all need to be encouraged to stand.
So Allison's asking, is Bishop Wooden the man that called out Beyonce's song in his Sunday morning sermon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They did Monique and Kevin did an episode of Off Code with Bishop Wooden in a rare media appearance. And so you can check that out on Off Code.
Pam is asking, why are we on a Friday? We're on a Friday because I forgot to do the family meeting on Thursday.
We were so busy having fun listening to the service last night. We forgot to do the family meeting. So let's see.
Okay. Robbie loves your shirt.
Yeah, a lot of comments about your hair.
Yeah, because I always have braids. Yeah. I'll say that. Yeah, I always have braids. Never just
people like the hair. Yeah. It's new.
Okay. Okay, when is Mo's birthday? Yeah. Valentine's Day. I am a Valentine baby. Most people would not believe that I was born on such a sweet day of life. But yes, I am February 14th. The year shall remain anonymous. Yeah. What other questions do you guys have?
Yeah.
Someone wrote in a question, and I will get to that in a minute. Let's see. I hopped on here yesterday to see if there was a family meeting too. Sorry. My hubby is also
Valentine.
Yes.
Woo-hoo, Debbie.
Must be very, very special.
That's right.
And I also know that all of the trials you go through because that's Valentine people.
Okay, here's another question for Mo. Are you dating anyone?
I am not. Okay, so Michelle, did you not see the post that Krista made like on the last family meeting? Does anybody know of a man for Mo? My God.
Yes, we told.
Okay, so we didn't have enough time for all this. But no, I am not dating anyone. I am definitely open to dating, and I am praying for God's plan for my life, whether that's singleness or marriage. I just want to make sure that I continue to live my life in accordance with His will for my life. would love to be married.
You're not against
No, I'm
marriage.
not. I'm definitely not against marriage at all.
But that
Um,
was one of the that's is interesting because that was one of the conversations in the session this afternoon,
mhm.
is some of the messaging in the Black community about marriage,
Yes.
especially like you felt that in the 90s growing
Yeah.
up, just that there wasn't always positive messages about even getting married.
Yeah. Well, see, and I didn't put two and two together until maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. So there's tons of messaging in the Black community, and I'm using the Black community loosely because I know
Yeah.
that there are many communities in America, they all don't share the same culture, but there is a large overarching narrative, I think, in relation to dating in the larger Black community writ large. So it was things in the 90s like our music. My mother's main message to me was you shouldn't need a man for anything. And mom, if you're watching, I'm not trying to put you on blast, but this is just some of the conversations that we had. And I'm grateful for those messages because I don't feel like I always had to run to a man in an unhealthy fashion in order to be complete. My mother raised me to be very strong, very independent, to think for myself, to act for myself, and to be able to work. And so I'm not, shunning her or dissing her on that issue. And there is also another, piece of that coin, another side of that coin when it's always you don't need a man. Like you can be a strong, independent Black woman and you do you. And then what undergirded that was a lot of the cultural messaging through music, things like
Mhm.
TLC Scrubs. No, I don't want no scrubs. Scrub is a scrub? A scrub is a guy who thinks he's fly, but also known as a buster. Like, but it wasn't just that it was select men. Like everybody at that time was being deemed a scrub. Or um you had Destiny's Child who had that song, what was it, To the Left, to the Left? Uh
Don't look at me.
I know I can't look at you. It's somebody in the comments. What
Maybe
was that song? Tiana
or
or
Michelle or somebody.
Michelle, somebody, Allison, where they were like to the left, to the left. All your stuff in the box to the left, in the closet. That's my stuff. Yeah, if I bought it, then please don't touch, don't touch. And quit talking that mess. That's fine. What y'all know that song. But then here came Independent Woman. Um, there was Queen Latifah. There was
What have you
um
done for me lately?
what have you done for me? Dun, dun, dun. Oh yeah. Who did that? Not Stephanie Mills. Paul Abdul. Yeah. But I mean,
So the kind
I'm Every Woman. Karen White had a song about I'm Not Your Superwoman, and the idea that Black women were always deemed to be superwomen, so we just gonna take a break because I'm not your superwoman. Like there was just so much messaging. And then I was just having a conversation with a guy at the conference looking at even the TV shows. So while the Huxtables were great, you get to the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and where is the real relationship? Yeah, Phil and I forgot Phil's wife's name now, but they had a cool relationship. But the kids, that was the beginning of just this. We can date anybody, and yeah, I might like him, but it was very superficial. You had Hillary, who had all these superficial relationships, and what can he do for me? And Will Smith was kind of like a player, and like, well, I like her, I don't like her. Remember that episode when they got locked in the basement and he was playing up against it was Will Smith and Tachina. That wasn't Tachina Arnold. It was the other girl from Martin. And like she popped off her fingernails and took off her wig, and he was like, ugh, like her natural beauty wasn't good enough. I mean, you pop off your wig and your fingernails on a date too. I'd be like, well, or a different world. Like there was just so many messages geared toward the Black community. And Delano had a great point where he said, Blacks went from blackface and being against blackface and being represented by blackface and all of these
100 years
100
ago.
years ago and all these minstrel shows and all of that stuff to Snoop Dogg leading women around on chains.
Dog collars.
Yeah, and dog collars. But this became the identity to a degree of pop culture in the Black community and what we thought was cool. And so yeah, like honey, I was not the one to be led around
But then
by a dog
suddenly
on a dog collar.
but then suddenly you wake up one day and you're 38 or you're 40 and
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, wait, I really do wanna get married. Now
Well,
what am I gonna do?
yeah, and it's like,
I've
yeah,
had all this messaging of being a strong, independent woman. Now
well,
what?"
and the people that you're now looking to marry are already married.
Mm,
And so while I don't necessarily feel like I need to marry a black man or I need to marry this kind of man, the good men who are like 37, 38 are married because this, they either had a vision for it or, happenstance and fell in love or, however you want to put it. But it does look like the pickings are slim because what I'm not is about to settle and put up with some foolishness.
I thought Delano's other point was real interesting of how many Black women, they are encouraged by their communities to go get their master degree, their doctorate,
Mhm. I believe we're the most educated group in America still.
and then but then they wake up one day and they're 38, they're not married, but they wanna have kids.
So then they're going to sperm banks.
Going to sperm banks, but only 2% of the sperm donors are Black, and they just decide, "Hey, I wanna have a kid because I wanna have a kid," and
And
there's
that's a problem too. And
yeah,
we don't talk about that enough in the Black community about like kids are like kids aren't like earrings. Like, let me just go out and buy a pair. Like that isn't it. Like life is by design. And when you skip over those steps that God has intentionally designed, it can come with a lot of heartache and issues for you as the parent, but also for your children. And we need to be thinking about that.
okay, we're
Okay, so yeah.
getting some questions in now. Alright, let's do this one. Knowing what you know now, what would you what would you something college, post high school,
Oh, what would you tell
maybe,
your
yeah,
college or post high school Mo? Gosh, I would probably tell me to read the Bible in context. Um, and
would you tell yourself to stay in high school?
Would I t oh, hold on, let me
Alright,
finish that. I'd probably tell myself to read the Bible in context and, like, to really sit
mhm,
down and get a firm understanding of the word of God, and to understand that you can love God with your mind. Like,
mhm,
loving God doesn't have to just be about how you feel, and if you don't feel God, you're not in
that's good.
trouble. He's not mad at you, he hasn't left you, and, to be weary of this feelings-oriented relationship with God. That is probably what I would tell my co-host high school self. Um, would I tell my high school self to stay in high school? I don't know.
Yeah,
I actually and someone actually has a question. Um,
this one?
yes, that's
Okay.
the hashtag or the yeah. Um, and so it says, tips for an adult going back to school. I'm starting a distance ed course at BTS. Hey, BTS, that's our school. We love, love, love BTS. One tip I would say right off the bat is have a conversation with Dr. Thaddeus James. Like just make you an appointment, ask for like
Was he
what
the provost? The
he's
vice
the vice
president?
president.
Vice president, alright.
Like just ask him some answers. Now let me go ahead, Dr. James, I love you. But he gonna tell you some stories. He got some stories, but they're good stories, and he definitely has a way of helping you to see, like, look, don't bite off too much because
Yeah.
you have to like don't be like me. So me last year, I bit off way more than what I could chew, and I ended up having to drop my classes. Um, Now I thought for some reason that I was superwoman and could take 3 classes and travel and write a book and still speak and do blogs and run a ministry.
That didn't work.
Ooh, when I said the Lord had to sit me down, honey, pride goes before a fall, y'all. I was stumbling, okay? Um, and so I would one at BTS, I would enjoy the process. I
Mm,
would not
that's
take
good.
too many classes. Um,
Yeah.
the school itself is designed for those who are working or in ministry.
Mhm.
Learn. Take time to actually learn. It is not about the test. or the papers,
or the grade.
the grade. It is what you learn will come out in the papers that you write. Their classes are amazing, and their professors are really in it to be able to guide you and walk you through so that you learn the information that you need to know. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mhm.
Don't think that, well, I'm an adult and I'm going back to school. I dropped out of school in ninth grade. Well, no, I dropped out of school in 10th grade. Ninth grade was the last year of schooling that I actually completed. I did not complete 10th grade. So I know what it's like to go back to school as an adult.
Mm.
I got my GED when I was 20-ish,
20,
about
yeah.
20. And then I enrolled in a junior college, and I went to junior college for a year so that I could transfer into Biola. And I mean, I know what it's like to go back to be an adult, to feel like, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, I had a ninth grade education, literally walked into the GED place, and they were like, you have to take this class and that class. They didn't realize I was on a timetable because my friends were also applying at a certain time to Biola. And so I was like, I can't take these classes. You have to give me the test, and we're going to see what we got.
We just walked in and took it course.
I walked in, I bought a GED book. I studied that book for 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks. They were having a test coming up. It was like 2 weeks before the test. I read through this book. Thankfully, I really enjoyed math before I even, dropped out, and had some upper division experience with math. But yeah, and I passed. And then I was able to go to junior college. So just know that you got this, and pray a lot. Pray a lot. Because the papers are gonna come, the books are gonna come. You're gonna feel like, how am I gonna read all this? One of the things that helped me out was to have like my iPad or my computer read the book to me out loud as I followed along. I'm not a strong comprehension wise, I am a strong reader,
Yeah.
but I'm a slow reader. And so that was super helpful to me. But don't be intimidated. Go in there and just do it. You got this.
All right. Allison's got a question here. Have you had any good food on the trip?
No.
Food is a difficult issue for us on trips often because it's hard to find. First of all, it's hard to find food that we can both enjoy.
I'm gluten free.
And okay,
I'm gluten free, and there's a gluten free app. Yes, we know, and we go on the gluten free app, and it's like, yeah.
But then we see reviews on there where people got poisoning from the gluten. Yeah, we don't want that.
Really gluten free. We eat a lot of Chick-fil-A.
We eat a lot of Chick-fil-A because it's something is predictable and it'll be okay.
There's one salad at Panera I can have.
And we've learned by traveling that places in California tend to be open later than places in the South. And so, like, if we don't get dinner by 7
out here,
and like maybe we go speak somewhere and then we want to eat after,
we're gonna be having them Lay's potato chips, and that's it.
Yeah, we eat a lot of Lay's potato chips. So food is always a struggle when we're on the road, to be honest.
Let's see. Hey, Tammy has a question for you. She said, Krista, would you please put the message out for me too? Don't play no games. Go ahead.
All right.
Being able to stand against things in this culture makes finding a relationship hard. So many people want to just go along to get along, so they don't want to be associated with someone who will speak up. And see, that's a problem too. Like if you, okay, so somebody was like, not, I won't mention names, but somebody, and it wasn't Krista. Somebody was like, you need to get on like Christian Mingle or whatever the Christian Tinder is, the Christian coffee meets bagel, and I was like, as soon as somebody sees my face or Googles my name, they're gonna be like, oh, you gonna have, I need a guy who's gonna be like ride or die. Like, you're gonna have to go hard. And so, yeah, because we, you gotta have a truck. Let's just be honest. You can't get a Prius. Okay, I'm too big for a Prius. All right, let's see. Different World had a strong feminist vibe. It sure did. Did you guys just give away your age? No, I only gave away my birthday. Well, and I mean,
because I said Sunday you wake up and find yourself 38 now.
Oh, yeah, no.
All right.
My teen just asked, she's 37. Nope.
All right, here's a comment. I think
I hear two unhealthy extremes. Marriage itself is bad, and the goal is marriage. The first in my former urban life, and the latter in my current suburban rural life. Are you saying that that's what you're hearing from me?
yeah, I think so.
Um,
I think the tension, Sylvia, is that, you know, and there is a certain created order and created design that God has designed for us in marriage. And the complication, obviously, is living in marriage in a post-fall world, in a Genesis 3 world, is a lot harder. But I think that avoiding marriage, or even just like having it not really even be a thought until you're in your later 30s, is it's kind of the trying to raise a question of like, is that really God's best for us? You know?
yeah, I mean, especially when you look at
I'm gonna get the power supply to put sec.
okay, especially when you look at like the Black community, where 70% of us are. I want to say it's 70+% of us aren't married. A large percent of those people won't ever be married. The conversation isn't that marriage is the goal, but when we think about or the highest goal, I'll say that, like, I'm not defective because I'm not married. Um, but when we think about God's design for humans, it is marriage, procreation, work, worship, definitely. And so, like these are pieces of identity. We were, as God has designed us, or his design. And so, yeah, I think that marriage should be
Oh, sorry.
almost knocked it over.
Yeah.
That marriage should be a goal, like, or you should be open to it.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I wasn't, and then I became undecided and was like, if it happens, it happens. But there was no intentionality behind it.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have a culture of people, ethnic group who collectively largely say that this is not important, how do you procreate? How do you pass down a lot of the beautiful parts of that ethnic group's culture? Another issue is that so now we have, and to me, there's three issues kind of lingering in tandem. The first one is that there's a large percentage of Black women who are not getting married. The second problem is that
Or opting out of
or
marriage.
option, yeah,
Actively
yeah,
opting out.
actively opting out. They don't see it as important. Men are, this, that, and the third. So that's one issue. Another issue is the issue of abortion and how that impacts the passing down the lineage, the heritage. And so not only are we, not getting married largely, but then we end up sleeping with somebody, getting pregnant. We don't want his baby, or a baby's inconvenient because I'm doing my own thing. And so we then abort that child. The third issue is the issue of the LGBTQ plus ideology that's really roaring its head and going rampant within the Black community. And so now we have women who are not getting married or opting out, who may be choosing an alternative lifestyle, and
Or mutilation,
or yeah,
sterilization.
yes. And so it's like, if we want to talk about systemic issues, true systemic issues, the things that are systematic, or things that are spread throughout the community, I would say these are problems that are truly within the community that are hindering our progress as an ethnic group.
That's good. Um,
What?
Tiana.
My grandma said the only thing open late. Mine used to say the same thing.
You better read it for
That's
the
funny.
podcast.
My grandma said the only thing open late is legs. Yes, yes. I have heard that a lot of times. Scroll down. Sorry. The other way.
Oh,
What was this? My
um,
mother taught adult education while I was in school. I dropped out too and got my GED. The high school I went to closed and refused to go back to public school. Interesting. Was there more behind it? I don't know.
No.
Wait,
Let's see.
unhided? So I can make
Oh,
sure.
sure.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I had already read it.
Let's see. Thank you, ladies, for your ministry. Who's this? April.
April.
Is that my April? Our April?
I don't know.
I don't know. Thank you, ladies, for your ministry. About 2.5 years ago, I came out of some messed up theology, and I have learned so much from you both. So glad you're here, April.
Yeah, for sure.
Women tend to think there's time later for marriage, but then when they're ready, men aren't as interested. Culture has told women a fairy tale, and I think a lot are waking up now. I think so too.
I think our friend Katie Faust makes a good point that she thinks, God's designed the female body for childbearing, your optimal is when you're in your early to mid 20s.
Yeah.
And fertility issues ramp up as you get into your 30s. And,
Well, I mean, go ahead.
In fact, it's called geriatric pregnancy now, when you're in your mid 30s.
Yeah, I think it begins at 35.
Yeah, when you get pregnant. So and one of the things that Delano Squire said in his talk today, one of the graphs, he had a ton of statistics, but one of them was about later and later marriage commitments in how, the average now is what it was now versus 50 years ago, and childbearing. And, we've got dropping population rates, we've got dropping fertility rates, and we have to.
My necklace, the magnet stuck to the.
But we have to be sober-minded about that. And I think that there's a difference between opting out of marriage and even opting out of marriage while simultaneously opting into childbearing apart from a man. I think these are deeply problematic.
Yeah, and this isn't to shame anyone who has a child out of wedlock. We're just talking about God's design and looking at the move forward.
Here's your question.
Do you think the mentality to marry late or not marry is a result of living in a sinful world? I do. I think that most of the things that happen, or if not all, are because we live in a sinful world. Part of it is selfishness. It's a sin.
Sometimes,
you know what I mean? Sometimes. But sometimes people, God has called people to not marry, to do a specific thing in the earth. And that's something that people have to settle between themselves and the Lord.
I think that's what where it's helpful to differentiate between creation design and salvation design. And in creation design, that is for all humanity, the best way to flourish, like the default, think of the default position on something, is a man and a woman building a family. That's the bedrock of society. That's God's best design for us. Our salvation call, however, for some people, they are called to singleness and serving God in a particular way. And we see that, in the New Testament. And God can still bless that and all that. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about someone that God has called to as a ministry. That's the exception. What we're talking about is people who actively opt out of marriage because they don't want to be bothered. They don't want the commitment.
Or like Michelle is saying, the feminist movement. I think the feminist movement has had a huge impact in this conversation. And what does it mean to be a woman? And being a woman doesn't mean that you're just, making a sandwich, or you're just barefoot in the kitchen, or you're just, you know what I mean? Like, what does it really mean to be a woman? And so, I think that a lot of those conversations and questions have impacted this.
Okay, we've got a few more questions for Ask Mo Anything while we're waiting for some of those to come in. Yeah, a few more minutes. Yeah. Want to let everybody know about fall book clubs. Registration is now open. You can register for Critical Dilemma, which is Dr. Neil Shenby and Dr. Pat Sawyer's forthcoming book, which is an analysis of critical race theory from a Christian point of view. People aren't going to want to miss that if you're wanting, a more studious treatment of the issue. I think it's a very important book for Christian school administrators, Christian college administrators, Christian college professors, maybe some Christian school teachers, pastors, elders, ministry leaders, if you're the head of a Christian ministry, especially if you're working in a Christian ministry in the area of that kind of does like social service or resourcing, um, multi-ethnic church ministry. Critical Dilemma is going to be a very important book for you to be interacting with. The second group is going to be Rosaria Butterfield's book about lies of the secular culture. She goes through 5 lies. And even though a lot of the marketing on Amazon kind of makes it sound like it's a women's book, I checked in with Elisa Childers, and she's read the book because she's an endorser on it. I asked her, "Is this a women's book?" She was like, "What are you talking about?" And so a lot of the wording and the marketing on Amazon makes it kind of sound like it's a women's book. She says, "No, it's not a women's book." So I don't know why they're sort of positioning it that way, but that it's good. I'm sure Elisa is a very compelling book. And the third book is going to be Missing Pillars. If you missed
Brian,
that program, Off Code, with the author, Brian Shannon, the author is going to be leading that group and really looking at issues like we're talking about right now of family in urban contexts.
yeah, we should probably post a link to that video again, so people can go back and see that if they haven't. And I'm wondering if I should talk about the thing that me and John do.
Oh, sure.
You know.
So here's more questions.
Okay, go ahead, and then if I have time, I'll announce what Joe and I are going to do.
Michelle has a question.
What was your biggest lesson since meeting Krista?
The biggest.
My biggest lesson since meeting Krista. Krista will tell you I think I'm a know-it-all. So this might take a while. I don't think I'm not a know-it-all. Gosh, my biggest lesson since meeting Krista, I think has been that how you treat the family really matters. So we talked about this last night. Like, what does it look like to honor your mother and father, or to honor those in authority over you, or what does it look like to really be family? Like, I feel like since starting CFBU, I've really contemplated what does it mean to be family? What does it really mean to be brothers and sisters? Who are your brothers and sisters? I think that's been one of the biggest lessons. Because like for my biological family, I'll go hard, like just hard. And what does the Bible say about us as believers in being family? I think that's something that I've learned. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned since being a Christian, how to actually put that into the practical outworkings of your day-to-day rigor in life. So I think that's a big lesson. Another big lesson that I've learned since meeting Krista has nothing to do with Krista, but I learned how to make sourdough bread.
How's Elisa?
Thanks, Elisa. Okay, what's the next one?
All right, this is a good question.
This
is a good one. Behind the scenes question. Why are so few conferences in the Pacific Northwest? What goes into deciding where to hold, or how do you all decide which to attend?
It goes into, well, one, we only go when we're invited. And so the question, I think the easy part of the answer is for us, we go when we're invited. The harder part of that question is, well, why are people actually holding more conferences in the Pacific Northwest? The only conference that I really know of that happens in the Pacific Northwest is Stand Your Reasons conference that happens in the fall.
The reality
conference in Seattle.
Which our friend Laneige is going to be on the tour this year.
Laneige Garrison is going to be on the tour. It's a question that I ask myself. I don't know if it's about those areas just being more progressive, and so maybe there are conferences being held, but maybe like people like Jen Hatmaker are going to them.
I think part of the issue is, from what we've heard, this could be wrong, but from what we've heard, the churches are a lot smaller in the Pacific Northwest, and so putting on a conference of a a size of like the Stand to Reason conference where you've got like 1,000 young people there is really hard. It's even hard to find a church that can hold that many people because apparently a lot of the churches in the Pacific Northwest are just not that big. And so finding a biblically faithful church that has a vision for putting that much money into marketing and volunteers and infrastructure is just rare. And most speakers go where they're invited.
Yeah.
Things like what Elisa and Natasha are doing right now on the Unshaken tour is very rare. Like that conference tour is being sponsored by Natasha's publisher, Harvest House. But that's rare. In most cases, people just go where they're invited. Okay, Sarah's asking, since we're on the topic of conferences, we're going to be speaking at the National Apologetics Conference sponsored by Southern Evangelical Seminary in October. It'll be in South Carolina. She wants to know, what are we going to be speaking on?
Good question. I'm not sure.
We're meeting with the guy in a couple of weeks. So we don't know yet. We just know we're on the itinerary.
Yeah, it's probably something related to race, justice, or unity. I can tell you that probably much. Let's see. Will you be doing your own events at some point?
Again, that really depends on the church situation. Like, if there was a church, and this is something we've been asking the Lord for a provision for a couple of years now, is if there was a church that had a vision to do a conference with us, and they had the marketing machine behind it, and the infrastructure, and the volunteers, we could provide the topics and the people and you know, the speakers. That's what I mean. But it really takes an institution with leadership with a vision for that.
Yes, it does. It really takes a pastor and a team that are willing to go out and partner with other churches. You know, I tried, and not even like for a conference, but when I was in social service, I wanted to get like 5 churches in my area together to actually support the food pantry I was working at in 2019, and was like, hey, you know, if you guys all just gave $5,000 a year. Now, and I mean, it's in an affluent area. And so it wasn't that $5,000 was going to break anybody's bank. I wasn't going to, a small 15 people church. And everybody was like, well, I don't like this group. And they don't like that group. We never worked with the Baptists. The Baptists never work with the, Presbyterians. And so
and these are all like conservative, biblically faithful churches. It's not
within like a 10-mile, not even 10, probably a 5-mile radius. And so
good size.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things of like, you really have to have the vision and be willing to knock down doors. And it's going to take usually more than just one church. But I'm telling you, hey, if you are that pastor or
you have a vision,
for that, let us know.
Yeah. And that's not really something that we can do as outsiders. It has to be something that comes organically within the community in order to really have the best success.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how events go. So if you have a vision for that, if you've got a church with that kind of infrastructure and volunteers,
or you're connected, it might not be all of your church. Yeah. So it can be, hey, I'm in a pastor's network, and this pastor's network, we are serious about doing this conference on, this topic or this theme. Then reach out to us and we'll get that going.
So Tiana's asking a question: how can we communicate a desire for apologetics for women conferences versus typical women topics? And we've spoken at women apologetics conferences. Our friends at Women in Apologetics, that's what they, kind of specialize in. I'm doing a women's conference in the spring in Alabama that are bringing me in. I did a women's conference this year. It was in April.
Tyler,
Texas. And so you just have to work with your women's minister and try to help her get a vision for apologetics and its importance. And what you have to understand is it has to come from you guys, where you are doing the tilling the ground and having the conversations and bringing your church leadership along, it's not something that we can do as outsiders.
Typical topic is how to be Mary and not a Martha. I would say, if you're asking how to start the question or how to start the conversation, I would just start by asking a question. Are you familiar with apologetics? What is your vision for teaching women how to understand the Bible in context? Um, are you familiar with what's it called? Expository,
Preaching
preaching and that style of learning scripture
verse by verse.
verse by verse and asking them, what's your vision for this? How do you plan to work with us so that we can be equipped and well versed in the Word of God? Those will be some of my questions. And look, I have enough things to do on my plate. And so if you can't do that as a women's ministry, I don't know that I can participate because I'm busy. But if you can, and if we are digging into the Word of God and really reading it in context and we're learning and we're doing apologetics, dude, I'm there. But otherwise, I ain't got time.
I mean, I think there's a list of comments on here of, women kind of opting out of the women's studies, and we'll wrap it up with this. But I hear you. I hear the frustration. I hear the discouragement, and yet I also want to encourage you with the word that if you, in your local church, you might be the most positioned to try to have persuasive conversations with the leadership. And if we always find ourselves in a posture just opting out because we don't like what's happening, then there's no catalyst to make anything different. And so what I found in my experience is if I don't like something, I have to begin to do the hard work. And sometimes this takes a year to build enough a relationship collateral with people in leadership to earn an audience to begin to ask different questions, help them to see things they don't see, because people in leadership have their own blind spots too. Sometimes they're just trying to tread water to stay on top of the crisis of the moment, and they may not have the wider vision. So I want to caution you against just constantly opting out of something you don't like, but rather thinking about, praying about how you can be a catalyst to have a different conversation. And often that takes patience and prayer, relationship building, deference, and really caring about the other person, coming alongside them to earn enough of an audience with them to help them ask different questions. And so,
I don't know. I don't know. I think that that's cool and that can be true. But if people are stuck in look, this is the way we've done it for the last 20 years, and thank you, but we're not really up for it. I mean, Sunday mornings might be great, and the women's ministry down the road might, or like something that you do with your friends could also be as to me impactful and something that takes you deep, something that um, you can like think apologetically on. Because I've been in a church where nobody was trying to do anything different because that's what they were used to for 15 years.
yeah, and I've been in that
And
church too. And I've also seen on multiple occasions that through patience and relationship building and building trust with the leader and trying to begin to see their struggles and what they're going through, you can change minds.
I'm not
And
saying you can't change minds. I'm just kind of like,
it takes
yeah.
time, and it's not a one conversation thing.
I don't think I'm saying that it's a one conversation thing. I think that you're gonna have to understand. Yeah, like Chris is saying, like have the conversation, but you're also gonna have to understand where people are. And sometimes I'm sorry, I might just disagree. I think sometimes people are very committed to the program that they're on because the program might just be the thing that they do.
I agree. I don't think we disagree. I'm just saying I'm more optimistic about persuasion and change when you really walk with that person for a while, because I've seen it happen on multiple occasions.
Mhm.
And there's other possibilities available when we put in the hard work of coming alongside that. Like, I'll just give one example. From my experience, I saw in our youth group at church that there was no apologetics content at all. And I was really concerned about that for our teens. But rather than complain about it to the youth pastor, I volunteered to organize a separate effort. And if I had gone to him and said, you need to add apologetics to what you're already doing, he would have been very resistant to that.
Yes.
But when I came to him and I said, hey, Norman, I see all the hard work you're putting into investing in the kids in these ways. And I acknowledged what he was doing. And then I said, and I think there could be some kids that are getting off behind who might want deeper engagement. Would you be open to letting me organize something for those kids? Would you be willing to help promote it?
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything. I'll volunteer to do everything. And I had 10 kids that came very faithfully to that effort for 2 years.
Yes.
And so I'm saying when all we do is complain or opt out over what is, but we never present something as an alternative, change can never happen. And we can allow that resentment to build up in us rather than being a catalyst for something different.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And I also think that you're definitely a unicorn in the idea that you teach theology. And so I'm thinking for the regular everyday person who may not be theology mom or be the person who is apologetically grounded. And so
Okay, I'm gonna take issue again then,
I'm
because
trying to figure out
like,
what's that with that person who is in the church where, like I was, where it was like, no, we like it this way. And it is the Mary Martha conversation once a year teeth. Like,
so what about like something like I'm thinking about Jen Biden. When I first met Jen years ago, she has no seminary education. She had never read an apologetics book. She didn't know who any of the people were, but she looked down the road and said, I'm about to have 3 teenage kids.
yes.
And I see that there's all these families in my small group, in my community, and we all have kids. And none of us as parents really know much about how to disciple our kids.
Yes. So she started taking classes.
No, all she did in the beginning was she just signed up for a book group.
Yes.
And then she signed up for another book group.
Yes.
And then
that's what I'm saying. She started learning.
But she's not a professional.
But she's
not. But
she put herself in a place where she could learn. The question is how do I get to a place where I can learn? How do I get that? And if my church isn't willing to provide that,
her
then,
church wasn't willing to provide a building.
And so she had to go outside.
Exactly.
And she found you. She found your grassroots apologetics with Natasha Crane's thing. That's where she first came into you at. We met her in San Diego. And so that's all I'm saying is that your church may not be willing to do that. You may need to find an outside source to be able to learn about that, because your church might walk a row with. I was at that church for a very long time. I can walk a row with people and yet they still want to do the same thing. I may have to look outside of this to be able to meet the need that I have.
Yeah, I hear you with that, but my point is turning into a very long
conversation. This is y'all. This be us, okay? We just let the camera roll, y'all. I'm sorry, y'all just now we forgot the camera was even going. Okay,
but I think this is the last. I think my point is that
I'm gonna have the last one. So go ahead.
I know you always have the last word. I think my point is that when all we do is opt out, this is what I'm trying to say. When all we do is complain about what is, and we never step into the risk of how could I be a potential solution.
Yes.
Then things will always be frustrating. Yeah, and it's easy to fall into cynicism of, well, women's studies are stupid. or women's studies are this, or youth ministry is stupid, or this or that. The cynicism is easy when we're so discontent. And I just think that the more biblical posture is to ask ourselves, well, I have spiritual gifts. How could I potentially make a difference
You
in
gonna
this
start a women's
situation? And I already have. 75% of my followers are women. I mean, I think that's what I'm already doing.
Yeah.
I just think that it's not the ministry that in my mind I plan to do.
Really?
But
I think we have an awesome ministry to women and to men. But I mean,
I think it's something that
primarily.
the Lord has provided,
Mhm.
but it's not something I went chasing after. And I had a dream of what I thought I was gonna be doing, but
Y'all, we gotta sign off. It's 5:35. We gotta go get dinner. We and now this conversation will continue all the way into the night. I can already tell you. But you guys, we are so grateful for you and for your support, your partnership. Thank you for being with us. We hope that y'all have found our banter, I don't know, funny, encouraging. I don't know. But this is a little bit of who we are. I see what Mo is saying because I know pastors that are set in their ways. And we must search for ourselves, sadly, to learn. Yeah.
but take people with you. This is my thing, is that don't just learn for yourself. Learn for 8 to 15 other people that you can bring with you on that journey, because they need help too.
So like learning and then taking that back to your community.
Yeah, or building a community.
If somebody ever reached out and said, hey, I have a group of 8 to 15 people, will you teach us a class? Like, would you ever do a special class for a group? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Like, what kind of special class?
Like,
I don't think I understand the question.
So let's say there was a group or a community that said, we really want to learn like hermeneutics. Like we want to do in-depth hermeneutics, like a semester-long hermeneutics. Is that something you would do?
I already do that class.
Well, that's like pick a class that you don't do. Intro to apologetics. We don't do that at CFBU yet.
Yeah.
So is that something you would do?
If it was for 15 people? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, 15.
I'd consider it. I mean, when I teach theology classes, it's usually about 30 people. But yeah, I mean, because to me, investing in each of those 30 people represents 8 to 15 other people.
Mm-hmm.
My whole way of thinking about things is stop waiting passively for the world to improve. Be the change, be the church, be the Christian that you wish other people would be. And so if you're discontent in your women's ministry or your men's ministry or your youth ministry, go become the thing that you're longing for. I don't care if you're a professional or not. When Jen Vidal started, she didn't have anything. She had no training at all. She hasn't taken one seminary class. Now she's got 45 people in her local community of families that she's discipling.
Yes.
And she has no education. Now, that's not to say she doesn't put in effort. She went through the Colson program. She's taken a couple of my classes, but she is the kind of person who just said, I'm going to start being the thing that I wish youth pastors would be, or my women's pastor would be. And she just decided, I'm going to start doing it. She's a regular person. And so that's what I'm trying to get to.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. I guess the word for tonight is be the thing you want to see in the church.
Yeah.